Richard Turner.
Richard Turner.
And looking with both eyes, I couldn't see how he did it.
Richard Turner, he does things that nobody else in the world can do with cars. Nobody.
I don't call myself blind because I see things in ways that other people can't see.
He's in the Hall of Fame at the Magic Castle.
Don't let anyone tell you there's anything you can't do.
Shark, how did the one you gave the pseudonym to, Mr. Hugs, get his start as a family man?
Well, first let me tell you, these families are very prominent, high-profile citizens within the community. Their names are very known and respected. So I have to be very careful when I tell some of these stories. So I definitely will use pseudonyms, and I will definitely kind of change the circumstances a little bit so pieces can't be put together, because otherwise I might be a shark swimming belly up, and that is not good. You know, more people die from death than any other cause, and I don't want to die from death.
I didn't know that.
That's true.
It's good to know.
More people die from death than any other cause.
Can you tell us why Mr. Hugs would buy a place he didn't need?
Well, first of all, Mr. Hugs, they got their start in the 30s, and they'd shine shoes of these gangsters. They'd hear stories about horse betting, dog racing, and different things, and they took that information and parlayed into a massive empire. Mm-hmm. And if you saw the scope of the empire, it's very massive. And they became very successful. And of course, as a success, and as a powerful man, and a man that's known to put the screws to people if they don't do what he wants, he's at a deli. He wants his ham and cheese. And there's someone in front of him being served, and he says, "I would like a ham and cheese." And the guy goes, "When I'm done with these people, I'll get your ham and cheese." And he goes, "I want it now." He says, "When I'm done with these people, I'll serve you, sir." He says, "Don't you know who I am?" He says, "I don't care who you are. When I'm done with these people, I'll serve you." So what does Mr. Hugs do? He buys the place just so he could fire the kid.
Wow.
And the stories go, he did that twice, and I got this information from people that were intimate during those times.
Right.
It's not hearsay, third or fourth generation. It's like second generation, and pretty well I've heard these stories not just from one or two, more than one source, I'll put it that way. So that just shows you the power and how far he would carry things.
Now, I heard it was the wives that introduced you to
yeah.
Mr. Hugs. What's that?
Yep. Well, the wives, they kind of had a crush on me. They're wonderful ladies, and Mr. Hugs' sister was married to Mr. Neurotic's. I call him Mr. Neurotic. They were sisters, and they were married to two kingpins, we'll call them. And Mr. Hugs' daughters were they liked me. One in particular, she was a brunette, but she wore glasses, and the other one was this cute blonde. And they hit on me, especially the brunette, like waves rolling in on a shore. But I have to say, and this is kind of pathetic on my end, I discriminated against women that wore glasses because it reminded me of my own vision deficiency. So I did not date women that wore glasses, which is, it was a hypocritical piece of prejudice on my own part, and I openly admit that. And so I didn't go after her, even though she was coming after me. I liked that cute blonde, but the cute blonde only wanted me as a friend. So that never went anywhere, but in the back of my mind, I always thought, what if I started dating that brunette and I ended up marrying into this family? What would that be like? And I thought that would be kind of an interesting but dangerous situation.
To say it in a safe way.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, why did you give him the nickname Mr. Hugs?
Well, after spending quite a bit of time with the two sisters and the daughters, I think they were, like I said, they were infatuated with me. I think they were infatuated with my deck. My deck. They were infatuated with my deck. And they said, "You've got to come meet our dad." And so I was scheduled to go meet him in their beautiful mansion. And I go in there, and as soon as I go in there, he comes up, he throws his arms around me in a big bear hug, and he's patting me on the back going, Richard, it's as if we've known each other for years. All the praise from my wife and my daughters. It's like you're my son. And as he's patting me, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, this guy's not always so friendly with people that he doesn't like. And it was kind of a creepy feeling.
Right. No kidding.
Yeah, no kidding.
Now, let's rewind to that mobster, Mr. Neurotic.
Oh, his brother-in-law. Yeah.
What was he like? And you gave him that pseudonym too, of course.
Yeah, Mr. Neurotic, because, well, he was like Barney Fife on the Andy Griffith Show. He was twitching around, always just looking over his shoulder like he was expecting a bullet to be coming his way. But he was very slim, trim, well-dressed, and very high profile. But like I said, he was twitchier than Barney Fife. And so that's why I called him Mr. Neurotic.
And he had a nice place because he owned a racetrack.
Oh yeah, that was one of the things. He was one of the major racetracks, dog racing, high lie, and in the years past he had ownership in some very high-profile racing establishments.
And you probably couldn't even say what they were.
No, I'm not going to say what they are because they're very recognized. They're still there, so I will not say that. And of course, he moved on from those things years ago. But yeah, no, he was very, very, very prominent. And that's part of the ways he made his fortune and fortunes.
Now, you showed all of them a lot of your work, your seconds and everything. Did you show any of their business associates? Because I'm sure those were some colorful characters.
Mr. Neurotic would have me in his beautiful home, and I'll just quickly describe it. You know, Jim Blowers was my chauffeur, and we'd drive up, and it's the top of this beautiful mountain, and it had a big spread that literally spanned out over to where you could see over to the ocean.
Wow, this is like a James Bond territory.
Big. In fact, that house, I heard years later was featured on one of those shows like Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. Because it was such a elegant place. Anyway, so he had me there, and he goes, Richard, would you mind showing some of my associates some of your work? And I'm thinking to myself, well, since that's what you're paying me to do, I guess I'll do that. I mean, he's paying me to come perform, and he's asking for permission for me to do what he's paying me to do. So I figured, okay, I'll do it. So I did my show and everything, and then at the end of the evening, after we were done, he goes, I have to tell you, my associates are all self-made millionaires. This is before we had the tech world, and everyone were self-made billionaires. These were self-made millionaires. And he said, they like to play cards, and they have other friends that like to play cards. And he told me, if you play your cards right, you could own your own establishment. You could own your own riverboat if you want. And I'm thinking to myself, when you align yourself with these people, when it's time to go in your own separate ways, sometimes a breakup is not very equitable. Sometimes you're broken up and you're broken. So I politely declined.
That's probably why you're still here talking about it today.
That's part of the reason, yeah.
Now, I heard Jim told you that Mr. Neurotic thought he knew your secrets.
Yeah.
Did he? And what's that about?
On the way home, Jim tells me, he said, Mr. Rick, he said, Mr. Neurotic took me to the side, and he says, Jim, tell me, how does Richard do it? Does he have some kind of special ESP? And I thought to myself, that is the silliest, most ridiculous idea for how I do my work I think I've ever heard. And this is a very strong, powerful, crooked, organized member of society. And yet he's thinking I'm using ESP to control the outcome of the games. Anyway, we both got a good laugh on that one.
I bet. Who made offers for the shark to deal for oil? What's that about?
Yeah, well, I had offers from the Middle East. It was one time, it started off, phone call. Very strongly accented voice, said they want to talk to me about doing business. And of course, I know what the word business means in this context. And at that time, I would always send any customers to my venue to give them business. So I said, meet me aboard my riverboat. I get aboard the boat, and the general manager says, we have some special guests waiting for you, and they look very rich and they're in the private dining area. So he escorts me to the table, and right away the one guy says, "I'm the interpreter. We're from the Middle East. I'm the only one that speaks English." There were 5 of them there, 1, 2, 3, 4. And the guy on the right, I believe, was the boss, and the interpreter was on the left. So I sit down and I have my cards, and he throws a stack of bills on my table and says, "Let's see what you can do." So I started showing some of my most difficult controls, controlling blackjack, poker, and my different deals and so on. And then he talks in some foreign language to the boss, and then he turns back to me and he says, "We'll give you $10,000 a week to come to the Middle East and play cards against these oil tycoons." And I knew what that meant, and I said, "No, thank you." And he was irate with me. He was instantly mad. He goes, "What? You're turning down $10,000 a week?" I said, "Yep." Well, he argues with his boss. Our boss is arguing back. He turns around and he says, "How about $20,000 a week?" Then he says, "How about $30,000 a week?" Finally, his boss, I could tell his boss was mad at him for not securing the deal. Finally, he turns to me and says, "How about $1 million?" Now, he didn't say if that was by the week, but I did say no. They were so ticked. Here they just haven't even had their dinner served to them. They ripped off their napkins, took the ones in their lap, threw them on the table, threw down their forks and knives, threw another big stack of bills in front of me, got up and left. And there were so many bills, I thought they had to be 1s or 5s. Later, Jim said they were all brand new, crisp $100 bills.
Wow.
I had a good night.
There's a lot of hazards in
A lot
this
of hazards
Shark's
in that.
Ocean.
Yeah.
Now, can you tell us about what Mr. Neurotic said about that offer?
Yeah, I was back at his home. We were again in he liked to be out on that patio, and we're on his patio table, and I told him about the $1 million offer I had from the Middle East, and as we're talking, he says, "Don't take that offer." He says, "In a situation like that, you will be 100% used." He said, "Richard, do you understand what I'm trying to tell you?" I said, "I know what it means." He said, 100% used means they kill you when they're done with you. I said, "I know that." I know that. That's why I did not take the deal. I don't want to end up floating upside down. So then the most interesting thing was, he goes, "Those Middle East oilmen," he said, "they own half the world." That's what he said. They own half the world. Then he goes, "We own the other half."
Oh, great.
I mean, I thought, now that is, what do you want to say, arrogance or whatever? He goes, "We own the other half."
Right.
Then he said, "We can arrange to have these card games take place in the United States, and we'll back you here." You know what I thought at that moment? I thought, wow, I'll be 100% used in my own country. I'll die here.
How patriotic.
That's the deal I was looking for, Switch.
Yeah.
Buried in U.S. dirt with U.S. daisies growing up under my toes.
USA all the way.
Oh, USA all the way.
How about this bartender that introduced you to a character called Mr. Cool?
Yeah, like I said, the place that I performed was probably next to the place owned by Mr. Hugs. This place was probably the most elegant place in the city. Very upscale, very high priced, very elegant. The bartender, he just kind of delighted and introduced me to these characters. I think he saw dollar signs behind what I could do with the cards. And so he introduced me to a number of people, and he says, "I have this guy named Mr. Cool. That's his pseudonym. He holds high stake games, and he heard about your skills, and he would like to talk to you." And my mentor, Dave Vernon, would chase down any card man, hustler, cheater, grifter, whatever. He would chase them down just so he could try to trick them into showing him their particular techniques.
And when you say chase him down, he went all over
He
the
literally,
world.
he would go around the world.
Right.
And Allan Kennedy, back in 1930-ish, he chased that guy down for quite a while till he finally found him. The first guy known that could deal out of the middle.
Wow.
Anyway, so like my mentor, Dave Vernon, I thought, why not? So we scheduled a time. It was I think it was a Friday night, and we went to the back of the lounge by ourselves, and we sat down to, I guess, lay our cards on the table.
Right.
And at first I wanted to see what he could do. And so I wasn't going to show him my stuff until I got a peek at his stuff. So we started talking, and he said, yes, I handle the cards. And so he demonstrated some seconds. He could do some good seconds. And he said he basically does second with a peek or paper.
Was he anywhere close to what you could do?
No. I'm sorry. It was
Sorry,
not.
Mr. Cool.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Mr. Cool. And he knew that too.
Yeah.
He had openly admitted that. But he had good mucking. He could bring in a card, in and out a card. He was good at mucking. Second dealing, peeking was the basic artifice, and with some shuffle controls, is what he did. So now it was my turn. So I start playing blackjack with him. Well, no, first I started showing him some seconds, bottoms, and then I showed him middle deal. He never heard of a middle deal. I mean, he heard of it, but never actually saw someone do it.
Right.
And then I started showing him, I'd let him shuffle the cards, deal blackjack over and over and over, win every hand. Then I say, shuffle up, we'll play some poker. And wherever he chose, that would be the winner. Then finally he goes, you have to be holding out. You're holding out. I go, no, I'm not holding out. No mucking. Look, hands are clean. I said, take the deck back. Shuffle them up. And I literally held up my hands in front of him like this. Shuffle the cards up. Are you watching? Are you watching? And I picked up the cards. I said, how many players do you want? 5. Where do you want to sit? Number 3. 4 kings. And he goes, I'll give you $1,000 a day to come work for me. He says, you do by yourself what it takes me a crew, 4 people to do. He said, I wouldn't need a crew. And I said, $1,000 a day? This is 1980, a lot of money back then. I said, no, thank you. And he goes, $2,000 a day. $2,000 a day. Right away, just umped it. $2,000 a day, just like that. And again, I politely said, no, thank you, because I know what that means. Then finally, he said, don't you get it? I want to buy you. How much will it cost to buy you?
I'm getting visions of the Godfather film with Tony Giorgio.
That's exactly what I had. My friend Tony Giorgio, who I have battled with for 21 years and was friends with for 36 or 38 years. But for the first 21 years, we were bitter enemies. But I remember that scene in Godfather. We slams a knife through one of the guys' hand, pinning it to a bar top. We had nice bar tops in this particular nightclub, and I did not really desire having my hand pinned to a bar.
You need him pinned to the deck.
Or pinned. I'd rather pinned to the deck, but not pinned to the bar, especially with a knife. Anyway, so that's exactly what I thought. It was Tony Giorgio and make a deal you can't refuse. So I told him again, no, thank you.
Now, can you tell us, even though you said no thank you, can you tell us about any of his private setups?
Oh, you mean his private casinos? Yeah. And over the years, he just kept having one offer, one idea. And finally, after, I don't remember, a year or 2 years, it was back in the early 80s, but he said, why don't you just come to one of my operations? He said, you don't have to deal. I just want you to come as my guest. And once again, like Professor, I wanted to see what kind of mechanics he had working for him. So I go with him, and he picked me up in this long Cadillac, and we drive. And as we go, he says, I have to tell you, everybody here own mountains.
And what does that mean exactly?
Owning mountains is a euphemism. What it means is everybody there are very rich, very rich. And in fact, the funny thing was the place that we went to, the guy literally owned the mountain that we were going to. The driveway was probably a mile, maybe a mile and a half long. Of course, we were going kind of slow, so it was really hard to judge the distance, but at least a mile long, going up, circling around this mountain. And then halfway up was a guardhouse. It wasn't a single-story guardhouse. This was a 2-story guardhouse. And the second story was so that they could see if cops were coming to raid the place.
So you were basically in a real-life scene from James Bond.
James Bond, all the way.
Like going to the villain's lair.
I'm going to the villain's lair, exactly. And so we pass through security, and we pull up in front of this beautiful place, and Mr. Cool kind of describes it to me, and out of the corner of my eye I can see the shadow, the image of this big, beautiful place. We go inside, and all of a sudden, after going down this hallway into this giant room, and all of a sudden, I hear the sound of cards flipping, dice rolling, music booming. And he gives me a tour. He said, Richard, we have 4 blackjack tables over here. We have poker. We have crap tables. We have a table here full of cocaine. Help yourself. I thought,
Wow.
yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And he says, open bar, anything you want to drink, and we have pole dances for the guys. So as I'm thinking, I'm going, I have entered the den of iniquity. And he goes, everybody's carrying handfuls of $100 bills. The minimum bet was $100 on up. And so it was all cash, all $100 bills. So I really wanted out of there because I was afraid of getting raided. And I had a kind of a high profile in the town. And the last thing I needed was attention on the news that Richard Turner has been raided. It for sure cost me my job. So I actually went in disguise. Well, disguise for me. Usually back then I wore my riverboat gambler outfit. I had a cowboy kind of Western hat and my hang down tie and my vest and my coat. So this time I wore jeans. I wore a nice shirt, tennis shoes, and because I was known for the guy that doesn't see so well. And so to cover any images or looking weird with the eyes, I wore sunglasses. And so I decided I really wanted out of there, but since Mr. Cool was my host, I had no out. So I decided to make the best of it. So I'm wanted to see what kind of people he had employed.
Oh, you're going to check out his dealers.
I'm going to check out his dealers, exactly.
Cheaters.
Right. So I go up behind this blackjack table, and there's 4 people on this side, 3 people on this side, the dealer. And I'm right between, and I'm kind of looking over out of the corner of my left eye, because I go and look out of one eye or the other, trying to get their hand position. If I see they're rocking a lot or whatever, that gives me a clue what they're up to or they may be up to. And as I'm sitting there looking, this guy right here turns around and goes, "Hey, Richard, it's me, Joey.
Oh, no.
You've been to my place in La Costa."
Oh,
and
boy.
I know. And La Costa was the place where the mob had their fancy beach houses at that time. And I had done a private event for him there. And at that time, he actually tried soliciting my services. And then he goes, "Now, Richard, are you dealing here?" And I go, "No, Joey, I'm just a guest like you." And he tapped me on the chest. He says, "Because if Richard's dealing," then he tapped himself on the chest. He goes, "Joey's leaving." Now, if I would have been behind the table, I don't think he would have been quite so friendly. No.
I don't think so at
I
all.
may have been swimming with my belly up.
Indeed. Shark, what does it mean to hijack a game?
Oh, yeah. Well, that was one of the things over the years that Richard, don't say his real name, I'm Richard, Mr. Cool would say one of his setups is he knew some people that would play heads up, high stake, minimum $25,000 buy-in cash. He said we'd be in 2 hotel rooms. He would have the hotel room next door. They would have it wired so they knew what was going on. They would watch the game, and at a certain point in the game, he said, we'll hijack the game. What that meant is they would come in, like a team of thugs, and grab the money, crash, and run. He said, just in case the other guy plans on hijacking the game, we'll hijack the game first. I thought, well, that sounds a little dangerous. And I said, what if they hijack the game first, or what if they have a bigger gun? So I passed on that offer.
Sounds like a good choice. And Mr. Cool, he gave you a tip on another type of game having to do with horses, horse racing. What was that about?
Oh yeah, that was another gambling thing. And he says, "Richard, on this day, on this race, the 6th race, bet to place this horse." Okay? He said, "Put your money there." So depending on how you look at it, good or bad, I did not make a bet, but I did have my friend Jim Blowers check the newspaper, and that horse did place. And if I would have put some money down, I could have made a big pile of cash. And what it did, it really made me think about just how far do his tentacles spread. Yeah, that was an interesting one. And
and speaking of that, with all the games that he had his tentacles in, you would think that one of them at least would have been rated over the years. Did that ever happen?
Oh yeah. In fact, I'm having dinner with him one time. I'm having dinner with him, and he's telling me he had the 10th floor, the whole 10th floor of this very expensive hotel. He leased out the whole 10th floor, and it was just one of his gambling operations, like a casino there. And it got raided, And he told me that the hotel has turned around and is suing him for $1 million. Now, this is back in the early 80s, so $1 million is a lot of money. So the hotel's turned around suing him for $1 million because they figured he made that much, and so they wanted a piece of his action. And another time, I saw on the news that Mr. Cool and one of his associates, and this associate, the name is very prominent, it's one of the top 5 New York crime families. They were arrested because their operation was busted.
Wow.
So, yep, that's the 2 that I'm aware of.
And my last question, as nice of a criminal as he sounds, have you seen him lately or, over the years, or has it been a while?
I have not seen Mr. Cool in probably maybe 38 years or so, since 1985, I think is the last time. And the thing is, he was, even though he was involved with all this criminal activity, he was really a nice guy.
Oh.
He always picked up the meal. He was always very polite and very gracious. In fact, a couple times he was my guest at the Magic Castle.
Wow.
He would come up to the castle and he was my guest there. And I figure if I ever ran across him, like I said, I grew to like him, and we'd probably give each other a hug and talk about old times.
Wow, it's going to make me look at the people whenever I go to the castle in a different way. Like, who knows who's here, right?
Yeah, well, that's always the case at the castle.
Yeah, that's true. All right, well, that's a wrap for my questions.
Yeah, well, that's a good one. We'll just share more Shark Tales on another time.
Sounds good.
Sounds
Over
good.
and out.
Swimming off.
Swim off.
Okay, and you had a card, yes, John?
Yes, I did.
You do remember what it was?
Yes, I do.
We almost forgot about John, but John's still here and wondering. Would you do me a favor, reach in, pull out a card? Tell me when you got one.
Got one.
Okay, let me clean,
Oh my
clean up
God.
my mess. Okay, I want you to show John his card. What was your card, John, out loud?
Ace of spades.
How did you do that?